study that is going to be coming out on Monday. Now, if you're reading a headline from the Daily Mail, you'll get this headline. Long conversations on mobile phones can increase risk of cancer, suggests a 10-year study. And what they do is the main study is how about everything is inconclusive. Here's the other headline. This is the MSNBC headline. This is the headline you'll find at CNN. No answer, just fuzz from cell phone study. After a decade-long study on brain tumor risks, findings are still inconclusive. But buried in these studies is the admittance that prolonged use of mobile phones over many years could increase the risk of cancer, scientists have found. See, that's in the document, but it's buried there, and that won't be the headline. However, a landmark study by the World Health Organization into the safety of mobiles is expected to stop short of concluding that they definitely cause cancer because the evidence is not conclusive enough. See, they'll suggest it may, and they'll say things like this. The WHO's report will not be released until later this week, but two national newspapers reported yesterday that it will quote evidence saying people who use mobile phones for at least 30 minutes a day, and the majority of us are on the phone at least 30 minutes a day. Let's be honest. Many of you, many more minutes for 10 years have a greater risk, perhaps as much as a third higher, of developing brain cancer. Cancer that is very uncomfortable. The Interphone research has been carried out over the past 10 years in 13 countries and is the largest of its kind. All right, I'm going to take a couple calls. Tons of news today. Ed in Texas. Ed, you are on the line. Yes, sir. We drop Ed? All right, let's go to Tim in Rhode Island. Tim, you're on the line. Yes, Tim.
Jason, big fan of Invisible Empire. I love that movie.
Thank you.
Sure. I was wondering if you got a chance to catch Boondocks.
Oh, yeah. All right, here we go. Thank you so much for making this point. I actually have the first episode, and we are going to be playing a small segment of it. Unfortunately, there is some rather coarse language, even though it's an Adult Swim show. Now, this is a show that I've championed for a couple years. It's been on hiatus for over a year. I was wondering if a third season was going to come out because the second season ended really before the Barack Obama hype had taken the nation. It was in its infancy. And they kind of spin that off. And I can't wait to play some of this for you. We're going to be playing probably the introduction at the top of the second hour. And what this is, it's a mockumentary. It's really a documentary by Werner Herzog, who is a famous film director who did feature films back in the 70s, 80s, and then moved on to more quirky things like documentaries and mockumentaries. And he's interviewing Huey, basically, and his family about the upcoming presidency of Barack Obama. And it just shows you all the hype. It shows you the grandfather, Robert Freeman, who's supposed to be this kind of funny civil rights legend. He wasn't really as good in the civil rights movement as he's been portrayed, but he did help out. Anyway, he goes, you know, I don't know where he gets this. I don't know anything about the Build-A-Bear Group or the Federal Reserve. I'm all about hope and change. And it just shows the ignorance of the populace for over 22 minutes. I highly recommend people check it out. There's even a music video out there on YouTube you can go check out. Just type out Ridin' Obama, blank Ridin' Obama, and it is extra hilarious. So we will be covering that at the top of the second hour. Jonathan in Georgia. Jonathan, you are on the line.
Yes, sir. I just first like to say that I enjoyed your last film. It was very informative, and I'm trying to give it out to as much to my friends. But anyways, my question is, hypothetically, say like the Depression like really hit hard, and a lot of our freedoms are taken away, internet is shut down. I'm curious, like, what would your role be when that kind of scenario happens?
So what you're telling me is if they shut down the internet, what am I going to do? That's a great question. I'm not sure how I'm going to reach an audience outside of the internet, seeing that is my main base of operations. That's where hundreds of thousands of people have already, and close to 1 million really. We have about 340,000 views on the the one version of Invisible Empire, 45,000 views on another full version. That's almost 500,000 views. The torrents are huge. PrisonPlanet.tv downloads were out of this world. So what do I do if that avenue is taken away from me? Well, then I'm probably going to have to try to get on some kind of public access network. I don't think they'll be able to kill the internet altogether, especially with all these different services that are USB sticks. And essentially, it is information that is being carried out over the airwaves. So I'm not certain that they're ever going to be able to stop the internet completely. They would like to take over it China style, but if those avenues are taken away, how do I get my message out there? I will cover that when we come back. We're taking your calls, 888-201-2244. It's the Info Warrior with Jason Bermas, only at PrisonPlanet.tv and Infowars.com. We are back. It's the Info Warrior with Jason Bermas. We're taking your calls, 888-201-2244. And I may play that Boondocks clip in the next segment. I was able to get it up there, and I really enjoy the show, and I'd like to play 3 or 4 minutes of the show, so we'll probably play it coming up in the next segment. Now, dovetailing and finishing off on what I would do if the internet was shut down, probably a lot of what I was doing before I was huge on the internet or involved, I guess, financially or career-wise in these documentary films. I would take the information I had, burn them to disk, and be giving it to my friends, my family, my neighbors, as I often do, but at an accelerated pace. There's also another great episode of the Boondocks out there, I believe it's from season 2, where Martin Luther King Jr., instead of being killed, is in a 30-year coma. And he comes out of the coma, and he's like, look, we need to take to the streets. That's how we can change things. And he's out there with Huey, and there's only 2 people at first handing out flyers and pamphlets and sharing information like they did during the civil rights movement. And I think that's probably my role, as well as maybe trying to infiltrate mainline media. I'd love to be on Sirius XM. I'd love to be on mainstream television. I'd love to have a voice outside of the internet arena. I'm very happy that you can get Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined over at Netflix. That's good news to me. That tells me that my voice is being heard on a massive level, and it will continue to grow. Now, before I take some more calls and we get into that episode of the Boondocks, in the next segment, I wanted to go over these 2 articles. This one's the Times Online found genes that let you live to 100. And we're often discussing here about life extension technologies, and people will laugh at you in the face. Oh, life extension technologies don't exist. They would never study these things. You're insane, Jason. Scientists have discovered the Methuselah genes, whose lucky carriers have a much improved chance of living to 100, even if they indulge in an unhealthy lifestyle. Only 1 person in 10,000 reaches the age of 100. Think about that, folks. 1 in 10,000. Instead, they have had other genes that stop those disease genes from being switched on. Longevity is strongly genetic and inherited. The so-called Methuselah genes, named after the biblical patriarch who lived to be 969, are thought to include ADIPOQ, which is found in about 10% of young people, but in nearly 30% of people living past 100, and the CETP gene and the APOC3 gene are found in 10% of young people, but in about 20% of centenarians, in other words, people who live to be 100. Following the analysis of the genes over 500 centenarians and their offspring, the studies show that tiny mutations in the makeup of particular genes can sharply increase a person's lifespan. This is why they're into geoengineering. And this technology, this knowledge is probably decades old. It is just now being revealed to the public because they can no longer stop independent scientists from finding out about it. Dr. Brasilia told a Royal Society conference that the discovery of such genes gave scientists clear targets for developing drugs that could prevent or delay the onset of age-related diseases, potentially lengthening people's lives and keeping them healthier for longer. And after all, we know the elite want the exact opposite. They want us to develop cancer. They want us to have shorter lifespans. They want us to have less children. This technology will only become abundant if they get their new world order, if they get their population reduction, if they can rule over us as hardcore dictators as we are their serfs and slaves. Dr. David Gems, a longevity researcher at the University College of London, believes that treatments to slow aging will become widespread, but only after what I just discussed, folks. That makes it possible to slow down aging. We need to reclassify it as a disease rather than as a benign natural process. Did you hear that? They're going to classify aging as a disease. They're going to treat it as a symptom. These people truly do want to be gods and live forever, and we need to be aware of that makeup. Now here's the other headline: Holy Grail cancer vaccine that blasts tumors in weeks hailed as a huge leap in fighting disease. Now I'm not telling you to go out and take the trials. I'm not saying that this thing actually works. I'm just reporting on it. Scientists have developed a new jab which they hope will be the Holy Grail cancer cure. It will be tested on British patients over the next few months and can reverse and even cure malignant melanoma, the most dangerous form of skin cancer. There are hopes that new forms could be developed to fight other forms of cancer, such as breast and prostate. Experts say it may even stop people from getting cancer in the first place, and that's where it gets really dangerous. Because obviously I don't want cancer, obviously you don't want cancer, and many of us may be tricked into taking this vaccine preemptively.